Hey guys, welcome back. So I've done a bit of a video the other day talking about front mount intercoolers, top mount, front mount, you know, what kind of gains and stuff you'd expect to get out of them, out of like an intake kit and a front mount on a ZD30. This one's come in now. It's had all the same done again. So big snorkel from That's Cool Fab. 4-inch snorkel, airbox, alley airbox, intake, full front mount. I'm pretty sure this one got the 600 kit put on it. So 600 kit front mount, intake pipe. It then come back to us. We fitted some plus 30 injectors. So we put some brand new plus 30 injectors in it. We also put a UFI ZL30 on the thing. And we put a Alpha Tech in it as well, which is a bit of ugly prick. Because we've just finished tuning the thing. ECU still hanging out of it. But we put the Alpha Tech Superstorm package in it, which gives us all live tuning ability on the laptop, obviously, as we're going. Scan tools in there doing some data logging in that too while we're doing it. And we also put a base map in the ECU to change things like throttle maps, obviously EGR, boost limits, and just do a bit of work smoothing out the fuel table in the factory ECU. These things got a real weird fuel curve and kind of carry on. So we do a bit of work in there, smoothing that out, timing, do some timing changes, EGR changes, and then majority of the fueling, rail pressure, injector duration, all that kind of stuff is then done on the Alpha Tech. So we get a lot of people ringing up asking, you know, I want to get 200 horsepower out of my ZD30. What's the kind of setup that you needed? So I wanted to touch base on this one and kind of just run through it. This is what we feel is, you know, a good setup to get that power comfortably without really kind of pushing the thing to its limits. The ZL30 on this one, I think we had a peak of maybe 28 pound, but on the lower tunes it runs like 25, 27 pound. On the big tune with a bit of extra fuel drive gets up around 28. So they're guaranteed or warranted for 30 pound of boost. So we like to sit a couple of pound underneath that, just give you a little bit of headroom. Stock ZD30 motor should have no dramas handling 30 pound of boost. We ran our own car at 35 pound. We've had other ones come in at 40 pound on a dead stock ZD. When I say dead stock, I mean no internal work, so literally just injectors and bolt-ons. So injectors, turbo, bolt-ons. Personally, I wouldn't go much above, you know, 37. Once you get into that 40 pound mark, and depending obviously how much power you're making, like you can run 40 pound and make 200 horsepower and it's not gonna hurt it. You run 40 pound with the right amount of fuel and some spicy timing and stuff in there, more than likely you're going to lift that head. But there is ARP head studs and stuff you can put in these things which really help. If you're kind of planning that 250 horsepower build, I would budget in ARP head studs. I would just do it because it's easier and simpler to do it than wait for your head to bloody lift and then you've got to pull the thing apart and go through it all. Alright, so I've got all the runs up on there. Got my little pointer again. Reasonably warm day today in the shop, around 28 degrees or so. It's not too bad. But as this thing come in, 89, 90 horsepower and 280 newton meters. That was a bit low. We usually kind of see these patrols go around that 100 horsepower mark. So, you know, arguably not terrible, but not great either as to why this thing probably drove so slow. Does have fresh tires and they're muddies too, which take a little bit out of it. But anyway, it is what it is. 90 horsepower, let's say, and 280 newton meters. The Eco Tune then, that is after all the mods have been done and we kind of put that base tune in the ECU. That's obviously with the plus 30s and everything as well. So it rolled, so these top lines here, the red is our torque curve. Being an automatic, obviously it gets up on the converter, comes down, converter locks, and then rolls out the door. Same as power, comes along, converter locks, rolls out the door. So that's our standard run. The next one, which is the green, that is our runs with all the mods done. So intake, turbo, front mount, injectors, the lot, with the base tune in the remap. So we're not actually adjusting anything yet with the Alpha Tech, just on the remap. She went 140 and 375. The next one, which I just realized I've stuffed up and left a 1 out of there, should be 172 and 475. So that is our kind of like our daily run around tune on the Alpha Tech, so tune 1. That is this purple line here, purple, pink, whatever it is, kind of running up. You can see when it was standard, I stopped the run there because power was dropping. On this higher run, I kept it going out a little bit further. On these bigger runs at the top here, I stopped it because that's where I'm pulling fuel. So I'm starting to pull fuel out of this thing right at like 37, 3800, because that's pretty singing for a little ZD30. And then obviously on our big tune, she went 210, 585. So the big tune is the orange, comes up, converter locked. Really wasn't super happy about that converter locking up, making that much power and torque through it, but she held it and rolled out the door. So I'll change the screen now to show boosted AFRs. Okay, same screen, we've just made it a bit small and we got our boosted AFRs down the bottom. Righto, I just had a fella drop a car, so I kind of stopped and can't remember where I was at before, but I think we got up to the point where we were talking about AFRs. So you can see, obviously the red lines is our standard. So standard AFRs and these things is around that, 20 to 1. Some will come in and they might be running, 18s, 19s, just depending what they are, how they're set up, if they're clogged up, whatever. This one was good. It was right around that 20 to 1 at the start, 19s, 20 to 1, basically the whole way through. It was a little bit low on boost. We can see that 15 pound, that's that line through there. So, yep, I'm gonna shut that door now. What was that?
Oh, I forgot to shut the door.
Yes, you did. Right, so, again, I can't remember where the hell I was. Anyway, a little bit low on boost. So this one was only making around 12 to 13 pound, which these things should be around that 15 pound mark. But again, who cares? Because we're going to change the whole setup. Now, the AFRs are not quite on the screen, but it doesn't really matter. That low run, so our eco tune, our low tune, basically whenever we turn the Alpha Tech off and it reverts to the lowest tune now, you can see that is the green run here. It's around that 25 PSI basically the whole way through, and super clean in AFRs. So up there at like 28 to 1, 26 to 1, 25 to 1, probably finishing up out the door here at like 22 to 1 or so before it starts pulling out. So super clean, super cool, super happy, and it still made 140 horsepower. So this is the kind of thing we talk about with diesel tuning, and I'm sure I've mentioned it before on other videos that essentially fuel is power. The more fuel we can put in efficiently, the more power we will make. Now, someone might look at that and go, oh, I made 140 horsepower, like that's pathetic, you can get that standard. Well, yeah, you can. And generally when we tune these things, they will go 380, 400 Newton meters and around that 140 horsepower, give or take a little bit. But that'll be stock turbo at 21 pound and probably like 20 to 1, 19 to 1. Usually we try and set them up so they're around 20 to 1 at peak torque, and they dip down to around the 19s in the top end to hold on to peak power. Now, we're making that power at 25 PSI and 25 to 1, 26 to 1. So super clean, super lean. Lean is safe, lean is cool in combustion chambers. So beyond that, then the next one we look at, which is stuffed up, was 172 and 475. So 172 is the pink run now, so it's a little bit more boost, just with a little bit more fuel. We get a little bit more boost drive. So it's coming down here, right when that converter locks, it's probably around 23 to 1. Runs through the door there, 24, 23, a little bit wavy. Finishes the run right up here, just tags 20 to 1 at about 3,800 RPM. Right there as we start to nose over and pull fuel. That's us here actively pulling fuel out of the thing. So that made 172 and 475. Again, that's like 23 to 1 really. So when you look at a dyno graph that's auto and it's got big torque down here, that's a multiplication through the converter. The converter's doing what converters are designed to do, torque multiplication. Okay, so but I just kind of wanted you to understand that, sometimes you might put an auto on here and it makes 600 Newton meters and 150 horsepower, and the next day you have a manual come in and it makes 400 Newton meters and 150 horsepower. The difference is that converter. That converter's just getting up in the RPM, it's making more power, making more torque, and that's what the dyno's showing. So comparing a auto with one of these to a manual one of these, and someone saying that they're making, like, I've seen people online go, oh, I've got 800 Newton meters out of my stock auto ZD30. I'm sorry, but you don't. They just don't make that. Standard these things tap out, around that 400 plus Newton meter mark. And on an auto, you'll see that on the graph too. So where it comes down here and the converter actually locks, if you come across, it's probably around that 300 to 350 Newton meter mark in an auto, because it's locking up at around 2.5 to 2.8, which is just kind of past where they make their peak torque. Normally is around 2.2 or so. Again, rambling. So, Whoops, dropped the phone. We threw the bigger tune at it, which is 210 and 585. So now we've got a pretty nice big flat torque curve. We're limiting how much fuel and that we're putting in, you know, straight off the bat, adding more fuel, converter locks, putting in more fuel, and just about now we start kind of running it out. Everything kind of starts falling over. Once you get above that 3 grand mark, these little things and most diesels don't really want to be revving much past 3.5 grand unless they're quite set up for it. You know, so the only way we're going to make more power in that top end is either by running more fuel or by having the boost pressure climbing the entire way. Now, because on that big run we're already hitting 28.6 pound, we don't want to keep increasing boost pressure, which means we have to increase fuel at the top end. So if we look at that run, you'll see the orange kind of starts leaning clean where I'm not quite on the throttle, which is why it's a bit droopy here. It should be kind of up there coming down. But that's me trying to stop it from kicking down. Obviously being an auto, it wants to kick down. So you look, AFR's come down. Once that converter locks, that's giving us a more true indication of what we're actually doing. And this one was right around that 18:1. It kind of set around 18.5. Then as we hit that 3 grand mark, we start bringing fuel down and it got down to just, I think it just got into the 16s. What's that side? That's 15:1. So I think it just kind of got down into the 16:1. But that allowed us to come up here and have this power and kind of hold onto it the whole way through. So gives us good power in that top end. Someone might be watching this at home and they might think, oh, well, you know, my car made 170 horsepower and a stock turbo. I don't need all this stuff. Again, look at your AFRs. You know, is that 170 horsepower usable? Can you hold the thing flat going up a big hill? Does your EGT skyrocket? Stock injectors kind of really tap out around that 200 horsepower mark, in my opinion. So this one having plus 30s in it, that green tune there, that's no added rail pressure, no added nothing. That is just a little bit of fuel limiter maps changing in the ECU. That's doing it. On the pink run, we are adding 3% maybe with rail pressure. And I think about 5 to 7 milliseconds worth of duration. So again, not really working that injector all to make that power. On the big tune, same rail pressure, but I think we're up at about 15 milliseconds worth of duration. Basically, you know, if you're wanting to hit that 200 horsepower mark in a ZD30 common rail, this is the kind of package you'd probably want to be looking at doing. I know everyone's going to ask, the next question is how much? Well, it ain't cheap. Rough ballpark figures, Alphatec fitted and tuned, you're looking $1,900. The injectors, you know, so we do injectors, glow plugs, fitting kit, new glow plug seals. Always do glow plugs at the same time. 99% of the time people won't change glow plugs in these things. There's no real service life for them, but they should be done probably every 100,000 Ks. They should be changed out. So yeah, rock cover gasket, glow plugs, injectors, glow plug seals, fitted, coated, the whole lot supplied. They're brand new, genuine injectors too, with genuine nozzles that get bench tested to make sure they all flow within like 3-4% of each other. I think you're looking around like $3,800 for those things fitted. So stock injectors, brand new, genuine. Bosch ones we do at like $2,800 with glow plugs and everything fitted. Actually, by the time this goes out, that'll probably change, because I think we were just talking to Diesel Central the other day and the core injectors have gone up like 50 or $60 each. So everything's pretty at the moment for pricing. It keeps changing every goddamn week. Turbo, you know, you're talking 2.5-3 grand by the time it's on the car. So we do gaskets, studs, oil and filter change at the same time whenever we fit turbos. Then you're going to look at, obviously most cars will have an exhaust. That can be anywhere from, you know, $500 to $1,500. Snorkel, airbox, intake, front mount. I don't know what DATS Cool charge for this, but I'm sure their intercooler kits are around that 2 grand. Snorkel, intake, all that kind of stuff's probably going to be another $1,500 plus. So I'd be budgeting, you know, 3.5-4 grand by the time you have all that kind of it sorted out. This thing's an auto, so it's likely going to need a valve body upgrade. Ideally, destall the converter. So, you know, if yours is an auto, I would budget at least another $2,000 in there for destalling the converter, a valve body, probably add some extra trans coolers. If you've got a manual, you're in the same boat, okay? You're probably gonna be going to a heavy duty clutch, single mass conversion, all that kind of shit. So it's gonna be $2.5 grand by the time it's in the car. So realistically, if you were gonna drive this car in, drive out, you wanted 200 horsepower, it's not unrealistic that you're going to be paying, you know, 10, 12 grand and up, just depending how much you want to do. Like, if you want to do the valve body mods and stuff here as well, this would be a $15,000 build, you know, every day of the week. Oh, we're putting gauges in this thing too. So we're putting cobalt, boost and pyro, and an ultra gauge. So there, by the time you do a pillar pod, the pyro gauges, you know, automated cobalt aren't cheap. And that, I think there's another $1,000 in that kind of stuff alone. EGT gauge is like 380 or 400 bucks. So it's not cheap. By all means, yeah, you can do it way cheaper. So I think I kind of touched on it before. Stock injectors at this kind of power level, you know, we're adding probably about 50 milliseconds worth of duration. These on the big tune, I think I was at like around 15 to 20, somewhere in that kind of window. On the lower tune, I think I was only at like 5 or something. It's stuff all, okay? So the main advantage of that is, so when we're talking about diesel tuning, we're talking about adding fuel. Basically, our injectors, we can pulse them, hold the injector open for a certain amount of time, and the amount of rail pressure we have behind that injector is kind of equals how much fuel we get inside the combustion chamber. The thing is, you can hold the injector open longer. So when you're talking about petrol tuning, they talk about duty cycle. These are the same sort of thing, except for these injectors will just hold open. So I think these have two forms of injection. So they do a pre-injection and a main injection. The pre-injection is to get a little bit of compression building up in the cylinder. So when you hit it with a big amount of fuel, that it burns it nice and quick. Also stops them from being so knocky and rattly. Some people probably laugh and go, they're still really knocky and rattly. Well, you turn that pre-injection off, they're worse, trust me. Tried that on my own car to see if it would help with fuel economy. Did not help, it just made it worse. So again, diesel tuning, when we're playing with this, we have kind of like a set window where we really want to get the fuel in, okay? So because diesel burns so slow, we need to try and get it in as fast as we can, and we get it in a small window. So as that piston's coming up the bore, when it hits top dead center, we're spraying fuel in, you know, 20, 30 degrees before top dead center. But because we're increasing the injector duration, so how long we're holding that injector open for, originally the piston would come up, injector stops, combustion happens, piston's going back down. If we're adding like 70 milliseconds to that injector on the standard one, trying to make over 200 horsepower, that piston's coming back down the bore, we're chasing the thing with fuel. The issue with the design, the issue with the design on most common rail pistons is they have a bowl. The injector actually goes down and kind of sprays inside that bowl, and it's designed to have the combustion happen inside of it. As that piston travels back down the bore, the design of the piston has a bowl and comes out and has a little lip. If we're spraying that lip with fuel, it gets a lot of heat in it, okay? So people will talk about de-lipping the pistons. That's where they kind of take that lip back out. But if we inject the fuel for too long and too late, yes, it will make more power, and yeah, it will make more torque, but it's really inefficient. It puts a lot of heat into the pistons, and it's a lot more likely to cause issues with like piston failure, cracking pistons, so on and stuff like that. So our opinion, 200 horsepower, 190, 200 horsepower, you know, on a chassis dyno is tapping out for stock injectors. We pushed our own stock injectors, I think, to like 230 or something on our car, but we were tapping out and it was like 15 to 1, just pouring out smoke because it was just inefficient. Pyros going through the roof because, not just because it's adding more fuel and making it inefficient, but the flame front was burning so long, half of it was probably coming out the exhaust, out the valve, because we were just so late with fueling. Cool, so there the figures are put down. 210, 213 horsepower, pretty nice. Drives real nice, but we also threw some gauges in this thing that the boys next door at BY Electrical did. And we put an ultra gauge in it too, so we just wanted to touch base. I'll shut this all up. So we just wanted to touch base on the ultra gauge, why it's a good idea to have some form of coolant monitoring, right? So these things, these factory gauges, useless. don't bother reading them, don't bother looking at them. They lie to you, don't do, it'll sit, you know, a needle width under halfway from about 60 degrees all the way up to about 110, 112 degrees. By the time these things are at 112, 115 degrees, you're likely already doing damage. Ask anybody out there that knows that it's done a head gasket or cooked one of these things, that it does not take much to do a head gasket in them if you overheat them. This thing being an auto, great idea to have something like this, the ultra gauge in there to monitor it, right? So this gives us our coolant temps, battery voltage. I think we've got RPM, we've got rail pressure, and I think I've got instant liters per 100, which he's going to have to calibrate and get that set in. But the beauty of ones like this over like the Scan Gauge 2 and stuff that we used to be able to get, you can actually set alarms on this, lad. So we've got a coolant alarm, we've got low and high voltage alarm, rail pressure alarms, boost pressure. Actually, sorry, haven't got boost pressure on these ones because the maps only read 22 pound. But we can go through there and kind of just set alarms, so it makes it a bit safer for him. He doesn't have to worry too much about his coolant temps. You know, he can move that down underneath or wherever he wants so it's out of sight, and it'll just carry on if it actually starts getting hot. I think that's about it for inside. I hope you find it interesting. If you are interested and you want to know more about, you know, why we do the mods that we do and what we use to do them, let us know in the comments below. If there's anything else you want to see, other kind of builds that are coming up. I think we've got a FTE coming in soon that's going for around that 300 horsepower build, you know, UFI 21L, some 30s, bits and pieces getting done to that. It's a bog stocker, so that should be a good kind of transformation and turnaround for him. But if there's more things you want to see, let us know in the comments below, guys. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.